I used to believe I was too smart for this kind of mistake. I was wrong, and it cost me more than money. I didn't lose everything in one day. I lost it slowly, message by message, month by month. At the beginning, it really felt real. Carl Miller always believed this kind of story happened to other men. Men who ignored obvious signs because they were blinded by hope. Men who chased youth as if it were a physical prize. Men who wanted to believe in a fantasy far too much. At 55, Carl thought his experience made him completely immune. He had lived long enough to recognize patterns in human behavior. He trusted cold logic more than fleeting feelings. He trusted structure and the laws of cause and effect. For most of his adult life, he worked as a mechanical engineer in Hamburg. His days followed precise, calculated routines. His work followed strict international safety rules. His world made total sense. His marriage lasted 23 long years. It did not end with a sudden act of betrayal. It did not end with screaming or broken glass. It ended with a heavy, suffocating silence. They stopped talking about things that actually mattered. They stopped touching without a functional reason. They simply stopped seeing each other behind the veil of habit. When the divorce was finalized, Carl told himself he felt relief. He told his friends it was a mutual decision. He told his family it was a peaceful transition. At first, it truly was. But then, the evenings in his new apartment became empty. The rooms felt larger than they had on the floor plan. The silence of the hallway became a physical weight. Cooking, for one, felt like a pointless engineering task. Eating alone in front of a screen became a dull routine. Loneliness did not arrive as a sharp pain. It arrived as a profound sense of absence. Carl tried to enter the dating world again. He tried the popular apps with their endless swiping. He tried forced conversations over expensive coffee. Everything felt formal and transactional. Like job interviews for a position he didn't want. Like high-stakes negotiations where no one was winning. Expectations always came before genuine interest. Rules always came before human warmth. He did not feel desired for who he was. He felt evaluated for what he could provide. Late at night, he began watching videos online. Men talked about leaving the grey skies behind. They talked about starting over in a place that didn't judge. They talked about warm countries where the sun never felt cold. About a slower life where people actually looked at each other. About places where people smiled without an agenda. The Philippines appeared in his feed again and again. Soft ocean light, gentle melodic voices, solid promises of traditional family values. Carl remained deeply skeptical. He told himself it was just a marketing fantasy. He saw it as clever branding for lonely Westerners. One evening, almost out of pure boredom, he created a profile. It was on an international dating site he had seen in a sidebar. He did not expect anything serious to come of it. His photo was simple and unedited. No filters to hide the grey in his hair. No luxury cars in the background to show off wealth. His description was honest and brief. Engineer. Divorced. Looking for something real. Most messages confirmed his initial doubts. They were too fast to profess love. They were too sweet to be believable. They were far too focused on his bank account. Then one message felt fundamentally different. Her name was May. Her English was imperfect but earnest. Her tone was consistently calm. She wrote that his profile felt peaceful. That single word stayed with him for days. Peace was exactly what had been missing in Hamburg. May was 32 years old. She lived near the coast in a province he had never heard of. She helped her family run a small, dusty shop. She spent her days caring for her mother. Her mother had been sick for several years. She talked about the weight of responsibility. She talked about the necessity of patience. She did not ask Carl for any money. She did not mention luxury or travel. She talked about the quiet beauty of the mornings. She talked about the rhythm of cooking simple food. She talked about the comforting sound of the sea at night. Their conversations grew slowly like a well-built structure. It felt natural. It felt safe. When Carl replied late because of work, she never complained. When he was exhausted, she simply wished him rest. She remembered the smallest details, things he had mentioned only once in passing. Weeks turned into months of glowing screens. At night, Carl lay in bed with his phone as his only companion. For the first time in many years, he felt truly noticed. Their first video call made him incredibly nervous. That level of anxiety surprised him. May appeared on the screen shy and smiling. She wore no heavy makeup to hide her face. Her hair was simply tied back with a rubber band. She laughed softly at his jokes. She covered her mouth with her hand when she laughed. She apologized constantly for her English. She said she was not very educated compared to him. Carl told her she was doing perfectly fine. He truly meant it. Slowly, an engineering plan began to form in his mind. He did it carefully. He did it logically. He realized he could work remotely for the firm. He had substantial savings in his German bank. He finally had the time he had always lacked. Why not visit her? Why not see if this piece was actually real? When he told her he was coming, she broke down and cried. She said she had prayed every night for this moment. She told him he was the answer to her life's problems. Carl felt deeply flattered by her devotion, but he also felt a slight, cold knot of unease. Still, he believed he was in full control of the situation. He believed he understood exactly what he was walking into. As the plane finally crossed the vast Pacific Ocean, Carl looked down. He saw the endless blue stretching to the horizon. He felt calm. He felt confident. He did not know that the story had already been written for him. It had been drafted message by message. It had been edited month by month. And the most dangerous part of the trap was simple. At the beginning, it really felt real. Carl landed at the Manila airport in the early morning darkness. The air outside the terminal was thick and smelled of charcoal and rain. It was a heat that felt like a physical weight on his shoulders. He scanned the crowd of faces behind the arrival gate. Then he saw her. May looked smaller and more fragile than she did on the screen. She was wearing the simple white dress she had mentioned once. She held a small, hand-painted sign with his name on it. When their eyes met, she didn't scream or run. She simply let the sign fall to the floor. She walked toward him with a look of pure, silent relief. Carl felt a surge of protective instinct he hadn't felt in decades. She hugged him, and her skin felt hot and soft. "You are here," she whispered into his chest. "I am here," Carl replied, feeling his German cynicism dissolve. The drive to her province took 5 hours in a cramped van. The world outside the window was a chaotic blur of green palms and rusted iron roofs. Carl watched the motorcycles weaving through traffic like schools of fish. Everything was loud, bright, and disorganized. It was the exact opposite of Hamburg, and that was exactly why he thought he loved it. May's family home was a small structure made of concrete blocks and wood. It sat at the end of a narrow, unpaved path. Inside, the floor was swept clean, but the walls were bare. A single electric fan hummed in the corner, struggling against the humidity. May introduced him to her mother. The old woman sat in a wooden chair, her legs wrapped in bandages. She spoke no English, but she took Carl's hand and pressed it to her forehead. "It is a sign of respect," May explained quietly. Carl felt like a king entering a humble kingdom. He felt like the benefactor he had always dreamed of being. That evening, they sat on the small porch. The sound of the crickets was so loud it felt like a vibration. May leaned her head on his shoulder. "I cannot believe a man like you is in my house," she said. Carl looked at his expensive watch. It looked out of place in this room. He felt a sudden, sharp urge to provide for her. He wanted to fix the roof. He wanted to buy a better bed for the mother. He wanted to bring order to this beautiful, messy life. He didn't notice the way May's brother watched him from the shadows of the kitchen. He didn't notice how May's phone never stopped vibrating in her pocket. He was too busy looking at the stars. He was too busy believing he had finally found the truth. The second week began with a sense of purpose. Carl felt like an architect of a new family. He enjoyed the morning ritual of buying fresh bread from the local bakery. He liked the way the neighbors nodded to him with curiosity. But the requests for help began to arrive like a slow, rising tide. It started with a broken water pump in the family shop. May did not ask for the money directly. She simply spent the morning crying in the small kitchen. She told him she was a failure for not being able to provide for her mother. Carl wrote a check for €500 without thinking twice. To him, it was a small price to pay for her smile. Then the brother, the one with the cold eyes, had an accident. "A motorcycle crash," May claimed with a shaking voice. The hospital wouldn't treat him without a cash deposit. Carl felt the logic in his head trying to raise a red flag. He asked to see the hospital bills. May looked at him with such profound hurt that he felt ashamed. "Do you think I am lying to you?" she whispered. Carl apologized immediately. He went to the ATM and withdrew the maximum limit. He handed the cash to the brother in the driveway. The brother did not say thank you. He simply tucked the bills into his pocket and drove away on a motorcycle that looked perfectly fine. A few days later, May talked about the dream house. She showed him a piece of land near the water. She said that in the Philippines, foreigners couldn't own land. But if he trusted her, they could build a sanctuary together. She called it their peaceful harbor. Carl looked at his bank balance on his laptop. The numbers were still high, but they were moving downward faster than he had planned. He told himself that real estate was a solid investment. He told himself that he was building a future, not just spending money. He began to notice that May was away from the house more often. She said she was visiting the city to handle the land titles. She said she was busy with the shop's taxes. Carl stayed in the humid house with the silent mother. He tried to talk to the old woman, but she just stared at the wall. He started to feel like a prisoner in paradise. The heat was no longer exotic, it was exhausting. The noise of the street was no longer life, it was a headache. He waited for May to return so he could feel noticed again. He didn't realize that he was waiting for a performance to restart. He was waiting for the actress to take the stage. One afternoon, the heat became too much to bear. Carl walked to a small cafe near the market to find a cold drink. The sign was faded and said Biergarten in old letters. It was the only place in town that didn't feel like a stage set. He saw an older man sitting alone with a glass of local beer. The man had the skin of someone who had burned under the sun for years. Carl sat at the next table and ordered a drink. "You're the German engineer," the man said without looking up. Carl was surprised that his reputation had traveled so far. "How did you know?" Carl asked. The man finally turned and offered a bitter, toothless grin. Because I was a German architect, the man replied. His name was Jürgen, and he had been in the province for a decade. Jürgen didn't ask about Karl's life. He simply pointed to a group of young men sitting on motorcycles across the street. See the one in the red shirt? Jürgen asked. Karl recognized the brother, May's brother. That's your girlfriend's husband, Jürgen said flatly. Karl felt a sharp, cold spike of adrenaline hit his stomach. He's her brother, Karl corrected, his voice trembling. Jürgen laughed, a dry and hollow sound. They are all brothers until the wire transfer clears, Jürgen said. Jürgen reached into a leather bag and pulled out a stack of Polaroids. He laid them out on the sticky wooden table like a deck of cards. Each photo showed a different Western man. Some were old, some were middle-aged. All looked happy. And in every single photo, May was standing next to them. She was wearing the same white dress she wore to the airport. She was smiling the same shy, innocent smile. "This is Steve from London," Jürgen said, pointing to the first photo. "He built the roof on that house you're staying in." "This is Mark from Paris," he said, pointing to the second. "He paid for the mother's surgery 3 years ago." Karl looked at the photos and felt the world tilting. The engineering of his life was collapsing in real time. Every pillar of his new reality was a lie. The shop, the sick mother, the broken pump. It was a script that had been performed dozens of times. Karl realized he wasn't a hero. He was a line item in a family business. He was a project with a start date and an end date. The piece he had found was manufactured in a factory of desperation. He looked back at the house down the road. He didn't see a home anymore. He saw a trap built of concrete blocks and beautiful words. Karl walked back to the house, in a daze. The sun was setting, turning the sky a bruised purple. He saw May standing by the gate. She was waving at him with that same practiced grace. To anyone else, she looked like a woman in love. To Karl, she now looked like a predator waiting for her prey. "You were gone a long time," she said, her voice dripping with artificial concern. "I met a friend," Karl replied, his voice sounding hollow to his own ears. He walked past her into the small, humid bedroom. He looked at his suitcase sitting in the corner. It was the only thing in this country that actually belonged to him. He began to pack his things in silence. May followed him, her eyes wide and searching. "What are you doing, Karl? Is it something I said?" She tried to touch his arm, but he pulled away as if her skin were burning. "I know about Steve," Karl said, not looking at her. "I know about Mark." The silence that followed was heavy and cold. The mask did not slip immediately. She tried to laugh it off as a misunderstanding. She tried to say Jürgen was a crazy old man who hated everyone. But Karl looked her directly in the eyes. He saw the moment the acting stopped. Her face didn't become ugly. It became professional. The warmth vanished, replaced by a sharp, calculating coldness. "You were happy, weren't you?" she asked, her voice now flat and hard. "I gave you exactly what you wanted for a whole month. Did you really think a woman like me would love a man like you for free?" Karl felt the words hit him like physical blows. He realized she was right. He had been paying for a service. The service of not being a lonely engineer in Hamburg. He didn't argue. He didn't shout. He simply zipped his bag and walked toward the door. The brother was standing in the hallway. He wasn't pretending to be hurt anymore. He was standing tall, blocking the exit. Karl reached into his pocket and took out his wallet. He took out the remaining cash and threw it on the floor. "That's the final payment," Karl said. The brother looked at May. She gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. He stepped aside. Carl walked out into the dark, tropical night. He didn't call a taxi. He just started walking toward the main road. He didn't look back at the house. He didn't want to see the lights go out. He reached the airport 6 hours later. He sat on a plastic chair and watched the sun come up over the runway. He felt older than he ever had in Germany. But for the first time in months, his mind was clear. The engineering was done, the structure had collapsed, and he was the only one left in the ruins,